Hello, it's me, the super glamorous version of me, Julianne, because I'm here today to do a book reading. Oh yeah, get me, because my novella, Unlucky in Lockdown, is about the lockdown. I thought that I better do a socially distant, shall we say, book reading and Q&A at which no one is present except for, moi. As Miss Piggy would say. Muppets Now is really good. Watch Muppets Now on Disney Plus if you've got Disney Plus. Anyway, little interlude there. But, you know, it's a very strange experience writing a novella about a pandemic during a pandemic. I thought I'd start by telling you kind of the background to me writing this, why I wrote it, and why I decided to self-publish it, really. I guess I'll start with the self-publishing part, actually, because I've always said that I didn't want to be like primarily a self-published author. I wanted to be traditionally published first. That's what I always said, because I have always wanted to write young adult novels, and I want my young adult novels to be read by actual young adults. I want them to be in bookshops because teenagers don't have credit cards. You know, I didn't have a credit card or a debit card. I had to buy all of my books in shops. So that's always been my ambition, to write teen fiction and for it to be in shops. Yes, that's the number one ambition of my life thus far. And so that's always what I've really been focused on, writing, trying to get a novel finished so that I can submit it to an agent in the hope that I can then get a publishing deal and go on from there, really. And there are things, you know, I want to write in my life, but I thought I would do all of those later. And I didn't go, I didn't go into lockdown thinking I was going to write something new. I thought if I feel like writing, I will work on my novel. And I started working on my novel, but then I realised that actually the pandemic solves a really big problem in the novel, basically the inciting incident. But the problem is I then couldn't go on from there because I need to know how it all ends, because the main part of the novel will actually take place after the pandemic is over. So I thought, okay, I can't work on that. What else can I work on? So I started, I reread another novel that I'd written a few years back, this one a new adult novel set at university, and I started writing, I did a beat sheet for that. So I did Laura Jane Williams' class on plotting a novel, where she went into detail about how she plans out her novels, and I sort of applied that to this novel. So I rewatched my downloaded video of the class and I tried to apply it to that, and I came up with a new structure, and I thought, okay, I'm going to write that, I'm going to rework that and see how it goes. But I didn't actually end up doing that, because meanwhile I had started sort of writing a story set during the pandemic. I thought, I'm really lucky because I'm here in my house, I can work from home. My job isn't normally work from home, but it is practical for me to do my job from home, and I'm here, my partner can also work from home, we're safe, we're together, and it's fine. But what if I was still in my mid-20s and I was living in a flat with somebody I didn't particularly like? And I really, really thought this was a concept that a lot of people would be able to relate to, and also it would allow me to write about that time in my life, really. When I was a student and I was flat sharing and house sharing, and what all my friends went through, but kind of also write about the pandemic at the same time. So I wasn't working about my own experience because I thought my own experience is quite boring. Nothing dramatic has happened to me. Not because of the pandemic. I've just basically been at home, keeping my distance from people, socially distancing, being good, all of that kind of stuff. And it's not very interesting. It's not very interesting. I wanted there to be some drama in whatever I was writing, to get out of all of my worries and my concerns and everything that's going on in my head, but also have a kind of plot. I can talk. Running through it to kind of bring it all together and to give it some dramatic tension. And also I wanted to write a book about friendship because, one of One of the things that has been really good about the pandemic is that because I haven't been able to go out and meet people, I have actually been spending more time talking to people that I didn't spend all that much time talking with before, because we've made arrangements to chat regularly over Zoom or house party or whatever, you know, and play games together. People who I'd usually see like once a month or once every other month, I'm now seeing like every couple of weeks, or even every week in the case of some of my friends. And for long stretches of time, me and my best friend have been calling each other every single day, and I just really wanted to write about how supportive friendship can be, and also kind of the awkward stages of beginning a friendship with somebody who you're not really sure about. So yeah, I just, you know, one day I just thought I'm going to write about two people who don't get on, who flat sharing and are now stuck in together during lockdown, and it just went from there. And then I finished it, and I didn't really know what I was going to do with it at that stage. I decided it was a novella pretty early on because of not knowing what happens next, you know. Nothing's really changed since the end of the novella. It's set during the first 2 weeks of the lockdown in the UK, and, you know, nothing dramatic has changed. You know, the government are encouraging people to get back to work, but, you know, the pandemic isn't over, it's still going on. And so I, you know, at the time I started writing it, it was like the day after what ended up being the end of the novella. And, you know, I knew that I couldn't make this into a whole novel. There just wasn't enough time to pass. And so I finished the novella. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I sent it to a friend to read, and she really liked it, and she gave me some feedback. And then I went through 5 or 6 more rounds of edits, I think. You know, some of them were relatively small, others were really dramatic. At one point I made a beat sheet for it, which is really tricky because it's a novella, and most beat sheet templates you can download online are for novels. So obviously a novella doesn't necessarily have to fit the kind of commercial 3-act structure format. I wanted it to, though, because the style of the book is basically it's commercial women's fiction without a romance. It's a friend-mance rather than a romance. So I wanted it to have the conventional 3-act structure, but I was kind of looking at what I'd written, because I just wrote it all. I didn't plan it. I guess I planned it a little bit. So, like, I was writing little plot notes for myself at the end of every session, you know, for what was happening next, but I didn't really have an overall arc other than, you know, they get to know each other. Will they become friends or not? So yeah, I was sort of looking at it, finding out what plot I already had, and then kind of fitting that into a 3-act structure and adding bits in and strengthening sections in order to make it kind of fit that structure better. And so yeah, it went through, as I say, 5 or 6 rounds of edits, with a friend of mine who also didn't have, you know, that much to do, another child-free person, and my partner also read it, and gave a lot of useful feedback as well. And then it finished, and I guess around maybe like edit 5 or 6, I decided that I was going to self-publish it, because I thought there isn't really that much of a market for novellas. I'd written a novella before, a sort of, I guess, early teen slash kind of, I guess, maybe middle grade novella, and I just couldn't find anything to do with it. And I was just really wedded to it being a novella and not trying to expand it into a novel, so I still have no idea what I'm going to do with that one. And I love it so much. I really, really love what I've done with that. I just think it's perfect as it is. You know, in my mind, like, the length of that novella is perfect. And I thought, I don't want to go around, you know, trying to find a publisher for it, submitting it to the one novella publisher that exists, which I already submitted my other novella to and got rejected for. You know, and then having to wait like 18 months for it to be published. If it gets accepted, I just thought, no, I want to get this out now, because now is where it could potentially help people. Now is where it could potentially help people feel less alone and recognise their own feelings in the story and in, you know, what the characters are doing. Basically, I wanted people who are actually living through it to benefit from it, rather than for it to be published eventually once this might even all be over. And, you know, I mean, it's not that it won't be worthwhile for people to read that kind of thing once this is all over. I mean, I certainly will be reading books set during this time, you know, as a way to process feelings. But I wanted it to be able to help people now. I don't know if that's an arrogant thing to say, the idea that your writing could help people, but you know, I wrote it with myself in mind, really. I wrote it thinking, what would I, if I wasn't me, you know, what would I like to read? What would make me feel better, you know? So yeah, it was very important to me that I publish it as soon as possible. Originally I wanted to publish it in July, but the editing process took longer than expected. So I decided to publish it in August, and I wanted to publish it at the start of August. But then some various life things happened to me which pushed it back. And then creating the cover took a while, and all of that sort of thing, waiting for Amazon to make it free. So yeah, I guess that brings me on to why I made it free. Why I made it free is partly, to be honest, it's because I was terrified of people saying I was trying to profit from the pandemic. You know, to be brutally honest, there's a couple of books that have been sold to publishers and are coming out this year, and people have written terrible things about them on Twitter, saying, you know, why are they trying to cash in on the pandemic? What are they going to say about it? And you know, like, I'm not, with my novella, I'm not trying to pretentiously explain what it all means or capture everyone's experience of the pandemic. I'm not trying, you know, it's not supposed to be the great pandemic novella. It's just supposed to be a book that will hopefully cheer people up, really. As I say, it's commercial women's fiction. I'm not being pretentious with it at all. And also, I didn't want there to be a barrier to entry, really. I wanted everybody who wants to read it to be able to read it, and for it to not be a big deal, not to be something that I'm selling. You know, like, yeah. I mean, I can do all that stuff in the future with future things I write. I didn't want this to be the one. It just didn't feel like the right time for it. And yeah, so I think even if I wasn't worried about people thinking I was trying to profit from the pandemic, I think I still would have made it free. I still would have made it free. And I'm very fortunate in that I have friends who are really, really good at reading and editing, and you know, they could give me that help for free. And also, I think because it's a novella, it was much easier for me to hold it all in my head and work with the plot by myself as well. Whereas I really, really struggle with a novel. Like, I definitely need an editor for a novel length piece. And you know, I could do my own cover design because I did it in Adobe Spark, which I've used a lot for work. And my sister has a photography degree, and she, you know, I was sending her different versions of the photo for the cover and getting her feedback. And she totally got what I was getting for, and it was just brilliant. Going for. And it was just brilliant. She gave me some really helpful feedback. And yeah, so we got the cover, which I will put up on screen. And yeah, so yeah, I guess that's it really. I've covered how I wrote it, why I wrote it, why I self-published it, and why it's free, which I think are the main questions. If you have any others, do leave them in the comments and I will answer them through the far less glamorous medium of typing. So now, without any further ado, I'm going to do the really scary part and read you some of the novella. As I say, it's already been published. I published it a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, because of stuff going on in my life, I was unable to really launch it with a big hurrah then. I basically just shoved it out on Twitter, and then I had to get on with a load of other important stuff. That's why I'm doing this now. But yes, it's available, it's free, it's on Amazon and Kobo and Scribd and basically everywhere else. I have linked to the page on my website where it has all the links for you to, well, not buy it, but download it. And yeah, I've already had some really, really lovely feedback from it, from not just relatives and friends, but also people that I'm not that close to, you know, people who were just like acquaintances and people I literally just met on the internet like a month ago. You know, lots of lovely feedback from people, and it's been really nice, and it's really heartening that I managed to create something during this difficult time and that it's meant something to people. People have even asked me to write a sequel, which, like, no mate, not yet. I've got to work out how all this all ends, and I might be able to do something with like time jumps with the characters across, you know, the months, years, whatever. But yeah, I don't think I can write a sequel yet. Right, Now, yeah, the scary bit. I'm gonna do it. No more rambling. No more rambling. Unlucky in Lockdown by Julianne Benford. Saturday the 21st of March 2020. Cora. Cora suspected something was up as soon as she woke. The room was bright and she felt perfectly rested. She rolled over and the red numbers on her alarm clock, 8:45, right in her face, confirmed that she'd overslept. She scrambled to her knees, pushing the duvet away so hard it tumbled to the floor, and reached to snatch her laptop from on top of her chest of drawers. In her head she desperately scrabbled to put together an explanation for her boss's benefit. Which sounded better? I spilled my breakfast, or my computer took too long to start up, or... Her mind whirled. She hated these 9 a.m. meetings. In normal life, the meeting wasn't until 11, so she had a couple of hours to enjoy her first green tea of the day, say hi to the people around her, and get some work done so she was in the right frame of mind to report to Ruth, her boss. Now she had to go straight into it with no warm-up time. Cora thought she'd enjoy working from home, and at first it was a relief. No more squeezing herself onto the tube every morning, praying it didn't pause in the gap between stations, and trying to keep her tiny toes away from other people's stomping feet. It should be more relaxing, being alone all day, not worrying about what 50 other people thought of her outfit, number of loo breaks, and work habits. But the actual work was worse than before, with these daily check-ins and regular team meetings in which Ruth reeled off all the things that company directors were concerned about, without presenting any solutions or anything remotely practical they could do. While her computer started up, Cora pulled on a jumper to cover up the t-shirt she slept in and put on some lipstick, scraping her hair back into a bun. She entered her password, only glancing briefly at the time and date, not taking the latter in properly. It was only when she opened the web browser that she had a second thought and hovered the mouse over the date in the bottom right corner. 21st of March 2020, Saturday. Flooded with relief, she pushed the laptop away and fell back on her pillows. It was the weekend! No work! A whole world of possibilities opened up before her. Then she remembered COVID-19, and that world of possibilities shrank to almost nothing. There wasn't an official lockdown in place yet, and the government's advice was timid and confusing, prioritising the economy over health and safety as usual. But Cora was sticking strictly to social distancing rules and had been for 8 days, ever since last Friday, when Ruth announced their entire company would be working from home until further notice, after one of the receptionists called in sick with a fever and dry cough. Cora hadn't stepped foot inside any other building since she got home that evening. She'd ordered a supermarket delivery to the flat and worn gloves when she went out for runs. She needed to self-isolate to be sure she hadn't got it so she could visit her grandmother again. Cora's parents moved out of London when they retired, meaning that Cora was the only one who could visit Granny easily, and she took this responsibility seriously. In the meantime, she'd ordered another supermarket delivery to Granny's and phoned her to check in last night. "I'm sure it'll all blow over," Granny had said. "Anyway, you're a healthy girl. You should be out with your friends on a Friday night, not bothering me." Cora had explained again that Granny was in danger and she shouldn't ignore that text she'd got telling her to stay indoors for 12 weeks, but she wasn't sure it sunk in. Last night she'd lain awake for hours worrying that Granny would get bored of books, TV and the radio and go out despite her dire warnings. It was all too much. But this was a new day and a weekend day no less. Cora forced a smile onto her face, put on her dressing gown and slippers, and went out to the quiet, empty and perfectly clean kitchen. Everything was where it should be, and that made her heart sing. Cora had a flatmate, Sandra, but she hadn't seen her for over a week because Sandra tended to sleep elsewhere. She was a loud, dramatic, aspiring actor. They'd only ended up living together because the previous flatmate, Louise, assumed it was okay for her to leave as soon as their last tenancy agreement finished and go travelling without warning Cora beforehand. Cora had to find someone in a rush and couldn't afford to be picky, not when she desperately wanted to keep this flat for as long as she could. It was on a nice, tree-lined road, her downstairs neighbour was a quiet old man, and she could just about manage to save £200 a month after rent bills and food. Thankfully, Sandra was hardly ever around and slept all day when she was, meaning that Cora got all the perks of living alone without the prohibitive cost. Cora made a cup of green tea and wondered where Sandra was. She didn't normally care what she got up to, as long as she wasn't getting up to it here. But it would spoil everything if she suddenly reappeared, full of COVID-19. Cora's heart began to race, and she took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on her to-do list. Book a new food delivery, if possible. Phone Granny to make sure she's in. Phone Meter, phone Mum and Dad, do yoga. What then? What then? It was going to be a long weekend. Tuesday, the 24th of March, 2020. Cora. Cora's alarm woke her up at 7:30 while the sun still hid behind clouds and her room was reassuringly dark. Despite her relief at not waking up too late, something she'd worried about since Saturday morning, her head pounded and she wished that while she was crying herself to sleep last night she had the foresight to change the alarm to 8. She decided she didn't really need that extra half hour. If she got up at 8, she could quite comfortably have breakfast, do yoga, have a shower, and be sitting in front of her laptop with her second green tea 5 minutes before the morning meeting. All that extra time gave her was more opportunity for her mind to drift and be anxious, and she had enough of that at night. Last night the lockdown had been announced. She hadn't watched the Prime Minister's announcement because she couldn't stand him, but she read all the new rules online. Essential journeys only, 1 walk per day. At least Granny was taking it seriously now. "You'll be all right on your own?" Granny had asked. "You could come and stay with me." "I'm not on my own," Cora said. "I have a flatmate." Though she still hadn't seen head or tail of her, thank God. "Anyway, I'm not safe. I could bring the virus to you." Granny sighed. "I suppose that's true. Victory at last!" But she still worried so much she'd made herself cry. Cora got up and put on her dressing gown and slippers, grabbed her empty water glass and went to the kitchen, straight to the sink to rehydrate. She turned on the tap, then the radio. "Deaths from COVID-19, said Chester." She turned it off just in time to hear a groan. She spun towards the direction the sound was coming from, and to her horror saw Zandra, her flatmate, fully dressed, sprawled across the sofa, shoes and all, waking up from what was presumably a drunken stupor. Zandra's head was killing her. She'd made the decision to come back here quite early yesterday, probably around 5 p.m, but then Daryl suggested 1 more for the road, which turned into 4, and pizza, followed by a late-night home karaoke session. He clearly hadn't wanted her to go and leave her with the 4 most boring gays in the universe, aka his housemates, and she was tempted to stay because Cora was even more boring than Dave, Jake, Gad, and Harry combined. But she wanted a real bed, some fresh clothes, and access to a shower that wasn't permanently clogged up with chest hairs. She could always sneak back to Daryl's at a later date, she reasoned. So she stumbled back to the flat, which took ages because the tube was running such a reduced service, and she'd fallen asleep and missed her stop, passing out on the sofa as soon as she got in, boots and all. So what? It wasn't a crime to come home during the lockdown, but Cora stared at her like it was. "Why'd you wake me up?" Sandra moaned. "I had no idea you were here," Cora said. "Sorry." "You walked past the sofa." "I didn't look," Cora said, throwing up her hands. "I assumed you'd still be wherever you've been." Zandra narrowed her eyes. She knew Cora must judge her for all the nights she spent out. It wasn't her fault that, being an actress, she had to go to a lot of shows and network at cast parties. It was basically her job. A requirement if she wanted to get paid acting roles again and give up her part-time jobs ushering and receptionisting. And if she happened to spend a lot of time falling asleep on more convenient sofas, or in more convenient beds, well, it wasn't her fault that the flat she'd signed an 18-month contract for was practically in the middle of nowhere. She couldn't afford anything nearer to the West End. Cora shuffled her feet awkwardly. "How's work?" Zandra rolled her eyes. "I haven't been at work for ages. All the theatres closed, remember? And the building I'm a receptionist in shut on Wednesday. I've been at Daryl's, but his sofa is no good for my back, so I thought I'd better come back here for lockdown." "To sleep on our sofa?" Cora asked, raising an eyebrow. "That was a drunken accident," Zandra said. "I'll be making the most of my bed from now on. Especially today. My head is killing me." She swung her feet to the floor. She was regretting this already. But the regrets melted away as soon as she was inside her room with the door closed. She'd forgotten how much she loved all her stuff. Here were all her favourite clothes, lined up on an open rail. Here was the glass lamp she'd picked up off the street as a student. Here was her very own bed, her proper mattress, her soft, warm duvet. She tugged off her boots, dropped her clothes on the floor, and crawled into heaven. Zandra woke up that evening, brushed her teeth and showered. After drying off, she put on a vest with her pyjama shorts. It felt so good not to be wearing a bra. So good she decided not to wear another one until lockdown was over, not wanting to entirely drop her aesthetic standards. She wrapped herself in her third best robe, vintage red silk, before she returned to the kitchen. Cora was closing her laptop, having just finished work. "Are the shops still open all the time?" Zandra asked. "I need to get some bits." A funny look passed over Cora's face. "I've got plenty of food," she said. "You can add your stuff to my online shopping order if you want, then pay me back." That was surprisingly nice of Cora. Zandra stepped forward, and Cora flinched back. "What?" Zandra asked. We should keep our distance, Cora said. I haven't been out except for runs for over a week now. Only a couple more days and I can be sure I haven't got it. I need to be ready in case my gran gets sick and needs someone to look after her. So please clean the bathroom and kitchen after you use it and stay 2 meters away from me at all times. Zandra's mouth hung open. I haven't got coronavirus. You don't know that, Cora snapped. You could be asymptomatic. So could you, Zandra snapped back. Yes, but after 14 days I should be all right. So should you. It's not forever. How are you going to get to your gran's while avoiding all other people? I'll walk. It'll take an hour to get there. I'll avoid main roads. Zandra laughed. You could be 45 minutes in, some random walks right past you and coughs. Come on, we can't socially distance inside our own flat. Cora went pale, but she didn't say anything. She picked up her laptop and mug and carefully stepped out of the room, just about keeping to that 2 meter distance by sticking close to the wall while Zandra shrank back to the other side. Zandra wondered what the hell she'd been thinking, coming back here to be locked down with miserable Cora and her paranoia. You're paying rent, she reminded herself firmly. It's your place as much as hers. And thus ends my reading. I've gone all the way up to page 11. So, if you enjoyed that, please do check it out. And as I said before, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you would like to see more from me. There probably won't be that much more to talk about my writing till I write something else. But there'll be lots and lots to talk about books. So yeah, thank you again, and do share this video if anybody you think might be interested. Share the novella link to anybody you think might be interested. I would really, really love to have more people read it and hopefully enjoy it, and yeah. Have a nice time. You'll see me again soon if you keep watching this channel. Bye!